My name is John Norval, and I'll be talking about the Great Locomotive Chase and the events and portrayal in film. To first understand the Great Locomotive Chase, we have to go back before the Civil War. Two engines involved in the Great Raid were the General and the Texas, both used by the Western and Atlantic Railroad. Both were a 440 American type of engine, which meant 4 leading wheels, 4 trailing wheels, and 4 wheels in the back, or 0 wheels in the back of the engine. They were both built in Paterson, New Jersey. The General was built by Rogers, Ketchum, and Grosvenor in 1855, and the Texas was built by Danforth Coke and Company in 1856. Before the raid, the state of Tennessee seceded from the Union in 1861. But in fact, the majority of residents were pro-Union, especially in the northeastern part of the state, compared to the minority in the south of Tennessee. A hub of transportation and supply throughout the war, Chattanooga contained strategic value for both the Confederate and the Union armies for moving in and out of the South. Major General Ormsby Mitchell saw this as an opportunity to solidify his legend as a general in the Army. He was a West Point graduate, graduated 5th out of 46 cadets, and was a math professor and astronomer at West Point after he graduated. He was very ambitious and up to the task of capturing Chattanooga. Chattanooga, however, had natural protection from rivers and mountains to the east and to the south, so the only real way of him infiltrating Chattanooga was through the northwest. It was reinforced by railway from Atlanta, which made the task even more difficult to attain. In comes James Andrews, a civilian/part-time spy who smuggled quinine over the border to Union soldiers. He lived a mysterious life. Not much is known about him except that he was from Virginia. In April 1862, he meets with Major General Mitchell, and there's no actual recording of the meeting, but it is believed by historians that the raid is proposed to Mitchell at this time. The raid begins. 24 men, including Andrews, 22 soldiers, from the Ohio 2nd, 21st, and 33rd Regiments set off on foot from Shelbyville, Tennessee to Marietta, Georgia. 200 miles in total, the first 90 of that had to be on foot in 4 days. All but 2 men make it to Marietta, Georgia, Samuel Llewellyn and James Smith. Both were captured by Confederate Army and forced to enlist on a backstory that they were soldiers from Kentucky looking to join the Confederate Army. One escaped, the other served with the Confederate Army for the duration of the war, and later awarded the Medal of Honor. The chase began April 12, 1862. The general pulled into Big Shanty, Georgia for a breakfast stop, which was normal back then. The raiders, disguised from the hotel, hijacked the locomotive and the boxcars. William Fuller, the conductor of the General, gives chase on foot and on handcar later on to track down his engine. The task seems hopeless, but back then it wasn't. Trains back then only traveled at an average speed of about 24 miles per hour, and it left a huge smoke screen for them to track it down. 3 locomotives were used other than the Texas. Well, the Texas was one of them. The Yonah in Etowah, Georgia was first used, followed by the William R. Smith in Kingston. And the Texas in Ayersville was actually going southbound and chased down the General in reverse. In the final moments of the raid, Andrews realized that his plan to capture the train and run it into Chattanooga to help Ormsby capture it was foiled. Fuller was gaining ground fast. The only success of the whole raid was cut telegraph wires from Marietta, Georgia, up to Ringgold, Georgia, where the General actually ran out of fuel. Just north of Ringgold, the raiders abandoned the General and take off for the woods. All the raiders were caught. 2 missed the raid because they overslept in the hotel, but they were also caught. James Andrews was brought to Virginia, tried as a spy, and was later hung as a spy in Atlanta, Georgia. 7 other raiders were tried as spies and found guilty and also hanged. 8 raiders escaped, and 6 others were exchanged as POWs, not knowing what their outcome would be. The Great Chase was actually the first event ever in American history that the Medal of Honor was awarded. Andrews and William Campbell, the engineer that Andrews hired for the raid, was not eligible because of their status as civilians. Jacob Parrott was the first to ever receive the award for his bravery in being beaten near to death when Confederates asked the names of all the raiders, and he refused. There are several memorials commemorating the event. In Chattanooga National Cemetery, there is a monument dedicating the event. The General is now housed in the Southern Museum of Civil War and Locomotive History, and the Texas is now in the Atlanta Cyclorama. The Andrews Hanging in Atlanta, Georgia also has a marker commemorating the event, as well as milepost 116.3, where the General was abandoned. The General is actually portrayed in two separate movies. In a Buster Keaton film, The General was a slapstick comedy, a silent one, back in the 1920s. It's not a very historically accurate portrayal of the events, but it's still a funny movie nonetheless. Later on in the 1950s, Fess Parker starred in The Great Locomotive Chase, a much more historically accurate film produced by Walt Disney, and is still used to tell the story to this day. Just a final picture of the 25-year anniversary of the raid and the soldiers that were involved with it. And that's it.